Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JacinioTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal and on Instagram at JacinioGram. Welcome to another episode. Like I told you guys on Monday, shows will be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'll keep you guys updated on times. I'll try to keep it as consistent as possible, but for now, just know you will be getting live shows from me Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That should be able to cover everything from the Europa League to, our games at the weekend and everything in between. And then members will be getting members content twice per month. So yeah, that's a little update for you guys. And this show is a little strange because we're not previewing the Europa League. We're talking about whatever's out there, in the ether. And there's not much, but I have, scrounged together a couple little things that we can expand upon and have a little debate. I like getting into the chat and seeing what you guys have to say. This is not an echo chamber. This is not a place where you have to feel like you have to feel one way or another. It's not overly positive, overly negative, anything like that. Just say your piece. As long as it's respectful and you're not calling anybody out of their name, we can have the conversation. And so we're not going to shut down things just because that's not what the popular feeling is around the fan base. We're going to talk about things from a real perspective, and I feel like that's only right. There's 50 of you guys in here already, which is amazing. Like the video and subscribe to the channel, and make sure that you guys vote on the poll. The poll that I have going right now is about Emil Smith Rowe. It's let me pull it up here for myself so I can see what you guys are saying. But yeah, I want to know what you guys are thinking about Emil Smith Rowe, because there's been a lot of debate around whether or not like Smith Rowe should be sold, and uh so maybe some frustration around his lack of fitness. And it's been brought up several times in the chat on SheKnowsArsenal. And so I think we can have a longer conversation about it today without it being just immediately shut down because we all love Emil Smith Rowe. I don't think there's any Arsenal fan that doesn't feel like, they don't have some sort of affection towards Emil Smith Rowe. He's a Hale Ender. He, pretty much saved us in December 2 seasons ago. And so I don't think anybody is out here saying that they hate Emil Smith Rowe, but it's worth a conversation to, ask yourself, is there a price? Is there a fee that you'd be willing to part with Emil Smith Rowe? Is he untouchable like Martinelli and bukayo Saka? And I want to know what you guys think. I want to know what you guys think. So get in the chat and let me know what you guys are saying. But before we get into that, what we're going to be going through is Saka's contract. Saka, Martinelli, and Saliba, they're all supposedly getting new contracts, and it's supposed to be going smoothly. ESR, whether or not to sell him. Marquinhos, is he going to go on a loan? There's been rumors out there that maybe in January he'll go out on a loan, and that opens up another conversation around, well, then who's coming in? Because you can't just be getting rid of players without replacing them. The games have been rescheduled. The PSV game has been rescheduled, and the Manchester City game has been postponed. We'll talk about how that is going to affect the fixtures moving forward. And then we'll predict what our scores or the points total is going to be for the next 5 games in the Premier League. So get stuck in, you guys. Get in the chat and let me know what you guys are thinking. Let's see who's here today. Let's see who's here. A cow says, is he not better than the players you've been promoting who've been giving away sitters? He scored 10 goals ahead of Odegaard and Martinelli. If properly handled, can score 15 goals. He's talking about Emil Smith Rowe. BX Gunner says, good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening to you as well. Gunnar Vettel says, we should give him a few more seasons before we consider selling him. He is injured a lot now, but I think with age he can improve. So yeah, before we jump into all of that, let's touch on the Emil Smith or the Saka, Saliba, and Martinelli contracts. This is something that 100% has to get done. I think most Arsenal fans are like waiting just for the announcement for these things to go through. This is coming from Graham Bailey. He says that Arsenal are pushing to tie down bukayo Saka, Martinelli, and William Saliba down to new long-term contracts. I do believe that these deals are all on the right track, and the club are hopeful all 3 will sign by January. And I do think, all 3 of these players have a really good chance to go to the World Cup. I think bukayo saka's all but, you know, he has to be going to the World Cup. I can't see him being dropped out of that squad now, even with the form of Rashford and Sancho, who hasn't really returned to any sort of form. I still see Saka making that squad for the World Cup. I think William Saliba, if he continues to start for Arsenal, will make the French squad. Martinelli didn't get called up for the last round of friendlies, but I think he's also in the conversation to go to the World Cup with Brazil. So I think obviously the World Cup starts in November, so we would ideally want those contracts signed before then. But if it takes all the way until January, who knows what kind of tournaments these boys are going to have and what kind of eyes are going to be on them for next summer, even in January. So I do think that Arsenal need to be careful and make sure that they tie these boys down to these contracts as soon as possible. And I know that they're working on it, but it just literally has to get done. I think the three of them are, if you were to put them on the market today, you could get, I mean, if Wesley Fofana is going for 80 million to Chelsea, how much is Saliba worth? If Anthony Gordon was supposedly going to go to Chelsea for 60 million, how much is Saka and Martinelli worth? And so the only way to ensure that if for some reason we're going to sell them, we could get as much possible for them. They need to be on long-term contracts. If we look at kind of what happened with Pedro Neto and Arsenal, is that essentially we just couldn't even get close to him because of the contract length that he had at Wolves. He was contracted with them until 2026. And so I don't think Wolves felt like they were in any sort of danger of losing him this summer because whatever fee they were going to ask for was going to be more than what most teams would be willing to pay. And that's the scenario that Arsenal need to be in. I can't really remember the last time that we sold a young player for a significant fee. And it's not a conversation that Arsenal fans want to have now. We're already having a hard time even just opening the door of the dialogue for Emil Smith Rowe. So I know nobody wants to talk about these things, but it is important just in case a Real Madrid comes out of the woodwork or a Manchester City. I did see within this article that Real Madrid and Manchester City are looking at bukayo saka. And that interest will firm up real quick if we don't handle business with these contracts. The other really important factor of all of this is Arsenal and how much we achieve. I think when you want to keep this core of young players together, not only do you have to get them on long-term contracts and keep renewing them and rewarding them for their progression and their talent, but the team has to progress and needs to get to the next stage so that the players don't feel like they have to look elsewhere to achieve. And that's what my biggest worry is about. Not worry, but biggest maybe concern about where Arsenal is now. We're a Europa League side and we need to be in the Champions League next summer or next season. We need to be in the Champions League. I think that's the only way that we can ensure that we don't lose these players in the summer. Because I think it'll be really difficult with these players playing the way that they are. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to these deals getting done. I think it's long overdue, especially if you look at somebody like Saliba, it's long overdue. So we definitely need to get that done. But how are you guys feeling about Saliba and Martinelli and Saka? Are they untouchable for you? Are they players that you're looking at and you're like, if Barcelona were to, offer, let's say 100 million, you'd consider it? Where are you with these three young players? Because they could be the future of Arsenal, or uh, they could also be a step. We could be a stepping stone for them, and they could be a step for us, where we could get a fee for maybe one of them or whatever, and then they move on in their career and we replenish the squad. How do you guys actually feel about it? Because it's a touchy subject, but I don't think it needs to be that touchy. I don't think opening up a dialogue about these things necessarily means that you hate these players, which I think that some people take it as. Terrence Tipp says significant fee is not just 50 million, Stefan. Oh, so Stefan is saying 50 million is significant. I don't think I would even consider selling any of them for less than 80 million. I just see the fees that are going around. I just don't think that, the types of clubs that would be looking at them would be the top clubs in the world, and they have to have the money to be able to buy these players from us. Um, Dat says sell El Neni and Holding and Cedric. Well, the thing about those players is that nobody wants them. And it's not so much about selling them in order to make money to do things necessarily. It's about, okay, well, if we get to a point where they want to move on and we cannot give them what they need in terms of like achievements, trophies, and things like that, how can we ensure that we get the right fee for them? That's really what it is, because I don't know if you guys are looking around on the landscape, but it's not looking like it's gonna be easy for Arsenal to be a nailed on Champions League level squad, or level team. You have for some reason, a Spurs team that doesn't really get beat. They don't play good football, but they tend to get the results in the league at least. You have Liverpool that look like they're getting back to themselves. When we watched them yesterday, they didn't look as raggedy as they'd been looking in those first couple of weeks. You have Chelsea that have a new era coming about. They have an owner that is willing to spend and facilitate a long-term vision for that club. You have Ten Hag and Manchester United, a group of players that were already quite talented and just needed a coach behind them to get them together and move them forward. And then you have Arsenal, a young team that's on the cusp of being a Champions League level squad. But can we put a stamp on it? Can we move into this next era so that we can keep these players? And if we cannot keep these players, how do we make sure that we don't lose them for small fees? That is the conversation. Ben Odison says, all three right now, I would keep them, but long term, yeah, I think Saka would leave at some point in the future, or Martinelli if he decided to go to Barca. Gunnar Dobbs says, we are nailed on for top four. That's my opinion when I look at our squad. Fair enough. The Onyx Lens says, we get so attached to our players. We are so starved for greatness. We forget that it's okay to do business in the market. It's unrealistic to think that we're going to keep them all. I think that's a really good point, is that there's two sides of the coin. There's, in the past, selling our best players to our rivals. I think that is something that's been a part of our recent history that has really brought on like a sense of trauma in this fan base. You look at, Alexis. He was a player that we could have gotten a significant fee for him in January from Manchester City. We waited and we ended up having to give him away for free, basically. You have Robin Van Persie. He leaves us to go to Manchester United, wins a title. That hurt very badly. You even have Cesc Fabregas. He leaves to go to Barcelona, comes back, goes to Chelsea, wins some trophies there. So even Giroud, he leaves, he wins trophies. So I don't really at Chelsea. So the idea that we would sell to rivals, I do think is somewhat traumatic for this fan base. So it's like we want to hold on to our best players. And Arteta has even said, like from his own mouth, that Arsenal should not be selling their star players. They just shouldn't. But then there's the other side of the coin where is there an opportunity to have a Coutinho moment for Arsenal? There was a Coutinho moment for Liverpool where they were able to basically swindle Barcelona into spending 100 something million on a player that no longer really fit their system, but was good enough where you could make an argument that Liverpool probably shouldn't have sold him, but they did anyway, and they never looked back. And so, are there opportunities within our squad to do that? Maybe that's not a Saka because he's too pivotal to what we're doing. Maybe it's not Saliba because he's going to be our Van Dijk. Maybe it's not Martinelli because he's going to be one of the best, creative forwards in the league and in the world. Maybe it's not those three players. And that's where you open up the conversation around players that are maybe not as untouchable as those three, but are still talented enough where if you could get 60 million for them, 50 million for them, it wouldn't be that bad because you could use that money to do something different. I think that's where the conversation around Emil Smith Rowe comes in, because he is somebody that is very talented, and this is my argument for why I would consider selling him. I also have an argument for why I wouldn't. So I'll give you both of them as we move into this conversation. But Saliba, Saka, and Martinelli for me in the short term to medium term are untouchable. They just are untouchable because I don't see very many players in the market that can give us what they give us or could potentially be what we know that they're going to be. They're untouchable. Put them off to the side. Then you have somebody like Emil Smith Rowe, who comes through with that group but has injury issues. And one of my biggest things, and I didn't make this up, but when I heard it, I thought, "Ooh, that's a really, really good point." And it came from Elliot Smith from the Arsenal Vision podcast. He said, "You wanna sell players when it's not obvious that you should sell them." It wasn't obvious that Liverpool should sell Coutinho. Still a good player in his prime, one of the best players in the league, but was just kind of easing out of the importance of that squad. They brought in Salah, they brought in Mane, they were kind of moving into something a little bit different. So it wasn't super obvious because you could have made an argument for them to keep him for depth purposes. Barcelona comes with a big bid, they sell him on, they move on. So with Emil Smith Rowe, he's not quite untouchable. He has some injury issues, but he's, an England national team player, or he has caps, whatever. He is very talented, creative midfielder, but he doesn't quite fit what we're doing at the moment because he hasn't really nailed down a midfield position and he hasn't really nailed down the wing position either. So he's kind of like an in-betweener. And we're waiting on him to have this explosion. We're waiting on him to have this breakthrough that I thought that he had last season, but his fitness issues really kept him from being able to really push through. So it's not really an obvious at the moment to sell Emil Smith Rowe because you can say that, okay, just keep him. Keep him because of depth. You want to make sure that you have enough good players in your squad to push forward. But, if let's say an Aston Villa came in with 50, 60 million for Emil Smith Rowe, because if you're going to sell Anthony Gordon for 60 million, Emil Smith Rowe is better than him, in my opinion. And I think you could sell him for aroundish that amount too. Would you not take it? We have Vieira in the squad. We have Sambi in the squad. Both of them play in those 8 positions /10. You have Odegaard, and then you have Martinelli on the wing. And the wingers that we were looking at in the summer were 1v1 specialists. They weren't players like Emil Smith Rowe that were more creative forwards. So there is an argument there, and I'm not saying that that's my argument, but when people bring it up, I do feel like it's kind of annoying that people don't just let the arguments come and have an actual conversation. It's just, no, we shouldn't be selling Emil Smith Rowe. And I understand why people feel that way, but I do think that there's an argument that you can put out there if you wanted to sell Emil Smith Rowe. Now, would I do it this coming summer? Probably not. But if he were to kind of maintain this lack of fitness, maybe the summer after. Ben Odison says Smith Rowe tried to get him to be trained as a future aide, but I do hope the injuries stop. I would sell if ESR was an 80 million offer. Natty Zion says, I hate Arsenal fans who bite the finger that feeds them. I don't know what that means. Rosh says, the important point is replacing him. Coutinho money got 3 top players. ESR money will hardly get 1 top player at current inflation. Is that true, though? Is that true, though? It depends on what kind of player you're going after. You could actually bring in a midfielder and another wing type player for 60s, no, not 60, maybe 70, 80 million, but it could get you in that ballpark, it could get you there. So in and around that. I hear what you're saying, but does that mean that you still keep him around if you can't get 3 players for him? I don't know. Jack says no one should even consider selling him with so much potential. The potential argument is really good, is really a good one because with a meal, it is all potential. It is all like, okay, well, this is what I kind of think he's gonna be, not quite sure, but he could be this. But when do we get to the point with him? Because the thing is, you look at a lot of players that have played for Chelsea. Let's take somebody like a Ruben Loftus-Cheek. He was one of the best players in their academy. A lot of people said that he was supposed to be something really big. He's another one that's had injury problems over his career, and he's how old now? 26? Let's look, maybe a little bit older. 26 years old. Emil Smith Rowe is 22, going on 23, right? So when does potential become actual nailed on talent? When do we stop talking about Emil being a potential star and start expecting him to be that? That's the question I want to ask you guys. These are all questions in a conversation. I'm not saying that he can't get there. He needs to be fit to get there. But Ruben Loftus-Cheek went from potential to somebody that just never really fulfilled it because he couldn't maintain his fitness, And so he's not unsellable, but he's somebody that maybe a couple years ago, a team comes in with, and this is a couple years ago, comes in with 40 million, for him, and you take it. Gunnar Thab says, if we can get and stay fit, he'll be a monster. But can he stay fit? That's the question. That is it. That is the question. Can he stay fit? AV says, are you seriously comparing ESR to Loftus Cheek? I mean, it's a good comparison if you take your agendas out of it and don't sit here and act like Emile Smith Rowe is very, very talented and he's somebody that people see a lot of potential in. But it's a good comp. It's a player that hasn't really nailed down a position. You don't really know what position he plays. He's was very talented. He was touted as being one of the best in their academy. And between the ages of 23 and 26, he hasn't really maintained his fitness and fell down the pecking order. And a couple of years ago, you probably could have gotten something for him when it wasn't obvious that he did not have what it took. So the idea that this is not a good comp is a fallacy. It's just not something that you want to hear. Billy says ESR is a top player. We stick by injury-prone players like Van Persie and Diaby. They are not even from Hale End. And ESR had a great season last season. 12 GA is very good. It is very good. It's very, very good. Keenan says ESR is injured all the time, and he hasn't realized any of that potential. If we can get 40 million for him, then we should take it and invest it in a complete player like Tielemans. I don't know if Tielemans is the one I'd go for, but it's a good argument that he hasn't realized any of his potential. But again, uh, success is not linear. And again, I've given you guys the argument for why we should potentially sell him, but he's only 22 and there's players that don't get. I think also we have to remember that Saka and Martinelli are like not normal. Like this is not the normal trajectory for players, and we shouldn't expect every single player to be on their trajectory. I think somebody like an Nketiah is a good example of that as well. At the age where Saka and Martinelli were, he wasn't really looking like them. He was a little bit more rough, and then he went away for a little bit. He came back into the team, and now at 23, about 23 years old, now you're starting to see more of what he can do. Maybe we just have to stick by Emile Smith Rowe. I'm not ready to sell Emile because I do think he does have the type of talent where if he doesn't realize it at Arsenal, but he realizes it somewhere else, it may be so good that we look silly in the end. Like, I don't think he's an Iwobi. Like, I don't think he's average. He's above average, and he may realize it somewhere else. And so I would like to give him more time and stick by him. With injury-prone players, I do think that especially such a young player, you do have to give them a little bit of time to get through this. And so for me, it's a little bit too early to sell him, but I think the conversation is coming out naturally because people are looking at it like he's not untouchable like the others and he can't stay fit. So I understand. Diallo, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, oh, here it goes with your other one. It says, hi, Jess. Sorry I've missed your recent live show. Been busy with my PhD dissertation. That's amazing. Good luck on all of that. Wish me luck. Exactly. Also, Mr. Magalhães, now I'm worried bigly. Yeah, we spoke about that the other day around Gabriel. I'm not too worried about it, but I understand why people are worried. Also, ESR is a gem. Can't sell that kind of talent. With Smith Rowe, he was given the number 10. I don't think the club is anywhere near wanting to sell Emile Smith Rowe. That I'll say that for sure. I don't think that they're thinking like, the fans are at the moment. Maybe it's in the back of their mind, but it's nowhere near like a priority. I don't think they want to sell Emile Smith Rowe now. But he has a skill set that nobody in our team has. And if he does realize that talent, it would be a shame for it to be somewhere else and for us to be sitting around like, oh shit, maybe it is a little bit of like, you don't want to have another Gnabry situation. With Gnabry, he was a little bit injury prone and he was younger. He went out on loan and then he left and then he ended up being really, really good at Bayern Munich. And so do we want that to happen with Emile Smith Rowe? Maybe not. Maybe his talent is so good that we need to give him more time. And maybe he doesn't have that breakthrough like Saka and Martinelli did at 21. Maybe it comes at 23. And is it that bad to wait for it? Gunnar says, even Nketiah is looking a lot better now. He looks so serious. He looks serious. No Saka or Gabby though, but still, yeah, no Saka or Gabby. And that's the other thing. Does Emil Smith Rowe have to be like Saka and Martinelli to have value in our squad? You know, Martinelli and Saka are on a level where they could be anything. But if Emil Smith Rowe doesn't necessarily hit that level, does he not still have some value to the squad where maybe you would just keep him instead of selling him? That's another argument. That does he have to be Saka and Martinelli to exist within the squad? Amira says, our fans, not you, Jess, can be so reactionary sometimes with injuries. 3 weeks ago was sell KT. Last week it was TP. Now it's ESR. Bring in competition. If they can't get back to their best, sell. Fair enough, you guys. Fair enough. Like, I saw a lot of this, over the last couple of days. I don't know if people were bored and overthinking, or it's something that as a fan base, we could have a dialogue about it and have a civil conversations around it without it being like, "Oh my gosh, you're doing this, you hate Emil Smith Rowe." But I think it's too early. Like, I definitely think it's too early to cash in on somebody who has such a unique skill set and could just be anything. And one thing our players don't have is the ability to progress the ball with their dribbling. Like, he's definitely somebody that when he gets the ball and runs with it, he's very difficult to get the ball off of him. And I think we lack that, especially in midfield. Like, most of our players in midfield are passers. And so if he could just realize that and remain fit, then he does have true value in the squad. I do worry about these injuries, though. It is so often that he has them that, you know, it is something that people need to wake up and say, like, it is a problem. I still see people tiptoeing around it as if it's just normal. It's not normal for somebody to have this amount of injuries. Minaj says, ESR is really good. I don't think we should sell him. He is a solid player with a high ceiling. Also, he has Hale End product, which is important for Arsenal as a brand. Good for a brand for the team. What's interesting about what you're saying about the Hale End aspect of things, I think, is why the Arsenal will not pull the trigger on selling Emil Smith Rowe too quickly, because he is Hale End, and that's a big part of the brand, like you said, and this new restructuring and recruitment and putting a lot of emphasis on Hale End and having players come through the academy and feel like they can make it into the first team. I think that's a huge reason why they're going to really work with Emil, and make sure that they exhaust all options before they pull the trigger on him potentially. They gave him the number 10 for a reason. Like, I don't think that that was just like, "Oh, we're just going to give him the number 10." They gave it to him because they believe in him and because he is a big part of the project. So, yeah, I agree. And he was so important for us like a year and a half ago, like when we were really struggling, we didn't have any creative players in our team. He was so important for us last season. His goals, he was so pivotal for us. He just couldn't get really going. He really couldn't get going because those injuries kept popping up. Let's see. Nith said, we already don't have enough quality depth, and yet our fan base want to sell ESR because we are not known for selling players for good money. Good point. The Onyx Lens says, my fear is that ESR's game is built on runs and second runs and less about passing, so his injuries could just continue to pursue as he gets older, and he may become less effective. His prime is soon. Interesting point. Jack Bomber says, let's not forget, he's never had a consistent run of games. He's insanely talented. Well, he's never had a consistent run of games because he's lacked fitness. Let's be fair. Then not having a consistent run of games for me is a fallacy, because he did have a consistent run of games. He was actually in the team over Martinelli at the beginning of last season. Martinelli only started really pushing for his spot because Emil could not maintain his fitness. So he did have a consistent run of games on left wing, and he just couldn't maintain it because of his injuries. So it's not because Arteta did not play him, which is different than Eddie Nketiah. He has been getting playing time. Let's see. Godwin says proper scouting will get you quality at a low cost. Huge fees don't guarantee quality. Check out Nico Pepe. Fair enough. Henkio says ESR is still so young. He's had a great season without playing only. He had a great season without playing only around half the season. He could become so great. Arteta and the club believes in his talent and potential. That's why he is number 10. I agree. Diallo says people should go back and watch ESR as a young talent. He was way ahead of Saka in all age groups. Injuries have ruined his progress. Well, he was in a higher. Saka is a he's an anomaly because he's younger than Emil Smith Rowe by at least one age group, and he was able to just kind of get into the first team and just do his thing. Emil went on loan to Leipzig like when he was like 19. So yeah, like he's definitely his progress has slowed and younger players have surpassed him, but that doesn't mean that his breakthrough won't come soon. I still don't think he's actually really had it yet. I think we've seen glimpses, but not really Emil Smith Rowe for a consistent amount of time at another level. We've seen glimpses. The best I've seen ESR play, I thought, beyond like what he did in the academy and early on when he would come into like Europa League games and things like that, was actually when we played against Brentford in the first game last season. I thought that midfield performance was really good from him, and obviously we struggled in that game and we lost, but I thought that midfield performance, if you go back and watch the compilation from that, is something that I want to see more of from him. He's a different type of number 10 to Odegaard or Vieira, but what he has is something that nobody else in our team actually has. And so he's quick. He's when he gets going and he's fit, you can't get the ball off of him. He has really quick feet. And one thing that he has that Odegaard does not have is he will pull the trigger and take really good shots, and he has real good ball striking ability. So you got to look back at like that game for me is like the player that I want to see, but I haven't seen it because he will not remain fit. Dat official says, I'm still mad that we sold Amari Hutchinson to Chelsea. ESR is a Lampard. Nev the Bear says, no, ESR is special, man. A lot of people believe he's special. And I don't disagree with you guys at all. I'm just saying that it's okay to have the conversation without demonizing people because they don't feel the same. Michael says, some are so easy to forget that ESR kept Martinelli out of the team for a good part of the season. Even when they were both fit, they were competing. Even if he becomes a good backup, still keep for now. I like that. I like that. I like that thought process. Keep him for good quality and depth. He who is called says, I hope he doesn't become a Ruben Loftus-Cheek story. Me too. Like, I don't want him to be Ruben Loftus-Cheek. I use that example because I think that's a cautionary tale. But at the same time, like, Arsenal are not in the same position as other clubs around us. And I think we all recognize that, is that, like, we kind of have to exhaust all options and use everything that we have. That's why the academy is such a big part of what we do, is because we don't have the type of owners that are just going to spend, regardless of what's wasted. So we have to use what we have. And Emil Smith Rowe, even he does have value to us, even if he can't play every single game, especially in the short term. So yeah, I hope he does not become a Ruben Loftus-Cheek, but he's so talented. Billy says ESR is basically Kaká. He can be Kaká, pace, ball, carrying, great shot, and understanding of space. That's a very big comparison, but I like big comparisons. I like people that are not afraid to say, this player reminds me of this player and say it with chest. So I like that. A cow says this boy scored 10 goals only behind Saka, and we're talking of selling him. Arteta pushed him to the left. He was playing better and scoring goals, but Arteta still preferred Odegaard. Well, yeah, he preferred Odegaard, and I think the way that Odegaard played last season, because Emil Smith Rowe started off last season and Odegaard couldn't get into the team. I think people forget that. Odegaard came into the side and struggled early doors against Brighton. I think in particular, he struggled and Emil Smith Rowe was in the team. Then Odegaard got some more chances. And even like with Vieira, there was early on, like people from one little cameo against Manchester United were saying that Vieira should start over Odegaard. And then Odegaard comes into that game and makes it look easy. I do think because we're frustrated around Odegaard and the way that he doesn't score enough goals and gets into those positions, we get frustrated that we don't actually realize that Odegaard is on another level to Vieira and ESR right now in terms of consistency of play and what he gives us on the ball and off the ball. He is just a little bit ahead of those two players, and those two players need to do more in order to usurp him in that position. It doesn't help that he's captain as well, so it's going to be even harder. But there is other positions that they could be looking at. The position that Martinelli's playing, Xhaka as well. Like who's going to be the person that eventually comes into that position. You have Emil Smith Rowe, Vieira, and Sambi. So there are positions to be had. But the idea that Odegaard should not be playing, I do think that just because you like the way that ESR plays does not mean that he's on the same level as Odegaard at the moment. And I think when we see Odegaard play and we see Emil Smith Rowe and when we saw Vieira play, we saw that he's on a different level. He's on a different level than them right now in his progression. That doesn't mean that they can't get past him. Sheikh says Odegaard and ESR can also play well together. They are different players, more like KDB and Silva playing together. Yeah, I think ESR has things in his toolbox that we just don't have. He's an athlete. He's hard. You can't get the ball off of him when he's like peak fitness. So yeah, I agree. So yeah, I think see you guys, it's painless. It's painless. We had the conversation. Nobody died. We all pretty much are on the same page that we love ESR and we think that he's very, very talented. But if you want to have a conversation around whether or not he should be sold, it's okay, because none of us are making the decision and it's just a conversation, nothing wrong with it. There's 200 of you guys in here right now, which is great. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, moving on to Marquinhos, there's a little rumor out there that he may go out on loan in January. This is coming from Goal Brazil. Arsenal are very happy with Marquinhos, but might send him out on a loan in January. It's up to his performances. And that's like, it was echoed between a couple of different publications. But if Marquinhos goes, who's coming in? That I think that's my thing. It's like I never have an issue with us moving players on or sending players out on loan. But like in January, it's not about the players leaving, it's about who's coming in. Who's moving in? Who are we going to get to replace that player? I think Marquinhos looks closer to the first team than I gave him credit for before the season started. My feeling was that he was too good for the under 23s, but probably wasn't good enough for the first team. And in terms of being able to give us the goals and assists that we need at that level. So he was in the in-between space of the under 23s, too good for that, but not quite good enough for the first team and maybe needed a loan. And he looks really good in the Europa League and in these early stage Europa League fixtures. He's good for us because he can play at that level and allows us to rest bukayo saka. But if he went out on loan, I would not be upset because my feeling is that like with Nuno, like with Balogun, like with Patino, like with Brook Norton-Cuffy, these players are better suited to being out on loan and getting day in and day out experience so that they can come back to us rather than us using them here and there and them not really getting that experience just for us to have them. And so Marquinhos is somebody that when we get past the group stages might really benefit from going out on loan somewhere. He's had an adaptation period where he's been kind of close to home with a group, of Portuguese speaking board members. You have Adu, you have Arteta, both of them speak Portuguese. You have a bunch of teammates that have kind of eased his transition into England. And then you can send him out on loan in January and let him thrive. And I really do think that that's the best thing for the Balogans, for the Brook Norton-Cuffys, for the Patinos, to get them out there playing first team football, and then they can come back to us with actual experience. So when we do need to use them, we can benefit from it. So I actually don't have a problem with this if this is what Arsenal were to decide. But my feeling is that who's coming in then? We need to make sure that Arsenal um, don't leave us with nobody there. I don't think Fabio Vieira is going to give us that winger presence that we need behind bukayo saka. We already loaned out Pepe, and so maybe Arsenal are looking to bring in another winger in the January window. But the January window is so much more difficult than the summer window. And so what is the likelihood of them finding the right player at the right price in that window? What is the likelihood of that? And yeah, so I want to get your guys' feelings on this. Do you guys feel like we should just let Marquinhos stay? Have you seen enough from him that you don't feel like we need to bring in anybody in January? Or do you feel like he could go out on loan and maybe we should look to bring in somebody else? There have been the little rumors about Mudryk, the Ukrainian Neymar, as he's been called, Ben Jacobs asking him questions about, well, if Arsenal were to come in for you in January, I don't think there's much in that because if Ben Jacobs had said Chelsea, if he had said Man United, if he had said Man City, if they come into for you in January, would you go? Of course he would. He wants to move to the Premier League. I don't know if that means that he wants to move to Arsenal per se, but are Arsenal going to actually pull the trigger in January to bring in a player like that? I just don't feel like that's the way that this particular regime operates. They want everything to be perfect, precise, right player, right fee, right scenario, right timing. And so they better not get rid of Marquinhos without a replacement. But we also need a midfielder in January. I think January is the time to pull the trigger on a midfielder as well. And so, do you actually see Arsenal bringing in a winger and a midfielder in January? I don't think so. Brian says ESR nailed it in the championship and was improving in the Premier League. Hope he comes back soon. Jack Bomber says, I'd be upset with a loan for Marquinhos. He looks promising for cameos so far. We cannot afford to burn Saka out in 4 competitions this season. Sheikh says, no, Marquinhos loan kindly. He looks really promising. The Wiki Tiki 123 says Mudryk is a left wing option though, and that allows ESR to come into that left center mid role. I mean, we need. I just can't imagine us loaning him out without having an idea about bringing somebody else in. What are we doing? The squad is already kind of thin as it is. The McChronicle says we loaned out Pepe to get Marquinhos game time. To loan him out and just buy a winger in January is absolutely stupid if Edu does that, but it's Edu. Well, here's the reality though. We were looking at a winger this summer. Like this past summer, we looked at Rafinha, we looked at Pedro Neto, and by all accounts, we were also looking at Mudryk. So I do think that it's something that Arsenal do want to do, but only in the right circumstances. I don't think Marquinhos was ever the number one option for that position. And because he impressed so much, it kind of is a nice little stopgap at the moment that could get us through. It's well planned. It's well planned because he's just good enough to do good in the Europa League for us in the group stages. But once we get beyond that, and Saka's played in the World Cup, and he's played in the Europa League, maybe, and he's played in the Premier League. When we get beyond that, what's going to happen? If Saka gets injured, what's going to happen? If England go really far in the World Cup, what's going to happen? And so when we get into April, our season is, well, potentially, if everything goes right, and we'll talk about this in a second as well, 44 games in 24 weeks. 44 games, 44 potential games in 24 weeks. That's a lot of football. And so we can't be getting rid of players, especially with ESR, his fitness issues. There has to be another player brought in. The Truth Says Free says Nelson, the Brazilian number 24. He's another option. I think it was Charles Watts who said that Nelson has been assured that he's going to be getting playing time in this team when he's fit. Another one that has injury issues that cannot maintain his fitness. So, yeah, is Nelson good enough? The thing about these options is that they're good, but they're not great. They're not great. They're not like exactly what you want. You're always still going to prefer Saka to play, and I think that's really the issue. Let's see. Mufasa says Reece Nelson is also highly rated internally, at least, but injury prone. A lot of the players that we're going to be potentially relying upon to rotate with Martinelli and bukayo saka are injury prone. They're injury prone, and then you have Marquinhos, who looks good in the Europa League, but I'm not quite sure that I believe that he's ready to step up into the Premier League. I could be wrong, but yeah, it I only think that this happens if the right opportunity were to emerge, like we were able to get a Madrid or something, but we also need a midfielder. Ben Odison says Marquinhos, yeah, loan. I think he played well, but in the later stages of the Europa League might be risky. But if we're going to get someone, it needs to be Madrid or someone there, and a 6 and hopefully an 8. You guys, it would be so out of character for Arsenal to not only do business in January, but to do business for multiple players. I just don't see it. I think we'll get one or the other. You guys let me know. Is it more important to bring in a winger in January for you, or do you think it's more important to bring in a midfielder? Let me know. Amir says, I think Marquinhos is at the age where he'd benefit more from regular game time. I agree. Learning from our first team. Don't see him starting cup games when we start playing in the tougher opponents. Like, game time for him is going to get less and less and less frequent as the season goes on and we get to the business end of the season. So a loan in January might do him just fine, like it did for Balogun last season as well. Let's see what happens. Chucking Bell says 90 minutes of Farmers League and Marquinhos is now a world-class baller. Well, I haven't seen anybody say world class. I haven't seen anybody say world class. I've seen people say that they've been pleasantly surprised. He looked promising. He looks really good. And so I actually don't think that there's anything wrong with saying nice things about our players, even if you're not completely happy with what's going on. And so I think this is a complete overreaction, Clucking Bell, because absolutely nobody has said that he's a world-class player. What people have said is that they've been excited about what they've seen, and he's been better than what they expected. That's not saying it's world-class. And that's often what people do. They just overreact to absolutely everything because, I mean, like your little avatar says, I'm pretty sure that you don't like anything that's going on at Arsenal at the moment. Keenan says Marquinhos is better than Reece Nelson, already having just gotten off the airplane this summer. I do like, some people have been trying to compare Marquinhos to Brazilians of old, and the original one was Douglas Costa, and then I think it was, I forget who it was on Twitter, but then they said they uh, they thought Malcolm when he was at Bordeaux, and if you looked at the comp, it looked very similar to Marquinhos in terms of playing style. And so I like doing little comparisons. But yeah, Marquinhos, he's been a lot better than I thought. But at the same time, like, I'm not trusting him in the Premier League. Like, I'm not going that far. And so we'll have to see what happens. But if they let him go, they need to bring somebody in. Jack Bomber says midfielder is so needed. We cannot be relying on Elneny and Sambi if an injury occurs to Partey or Xhaka if we want to compete for the league title. I think even if we just set our sights on top 4, we need to have another midfielder. I think it's going to be a lot tougher than people are making it seem. Henke Ho says, I think our midfield is solid in terms of numbers. If we sign someone in January, then it will be a player in the front 3 because you can't be missing firepower in the business end of the season. That's the thing. We need both. We really need both. But the problem is we probably won't be able to get both. So would you rather make sure that you have enough firepower, or do you want to make sure that your whole season doesn't crumble when the inevitable Xhaka/Partey injury comes around during the business end of the season? That is the choice, most likely. The real Giannis says, something I haven't considered is what if we are waiting to scout World Cup players? I am a firm believer that you should not recruit players and buy players off of the back of a World Cup. James Rodriguez, anybody? Living off of a goal in the World Cup in like 2008 or some nonsense like that. It was so long ago. And so, yeah, for me, it's a no. I'm not sure if I believe that that's what they're doing, but I could see them looking at the January window as an opportunity if there's players that we were looking at in the summer and maybe their teams weren't open to letting them go then, and maybe they'll be open to letting them go in January. But I hear what you're saying. So yeah, Marquinhos, okay with him going on a loan. It's never an issue to let players go. You just have to replace them. There's 200 of you guys in here. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, PSV, that game has been rescheduled to the 20th of October, and Manchester City is set to be rescheduled. And I guess what I wanted to ask you guys is, do you guys think that that's a good thing? Do you think that the Manchester City game being postponed to, it's going to be after January, it's going to be later on in the season. Do you think that that's a good thing? I feel like from last season, I don't want to be games in hand FC. I just want to get the games over with. And it was a difficult schedule because we had Tottenham, Man City, and Liverpool just like one after another. And so removing that game in the short term, I do think feels a lot more doable for us. You know, we wouldn't have to play all three of those really difficult games right off the bat. But where are they going to place that game later on in the season? Like I said, there's a potential 44 matches in 24 weeks. And when I looked at our April, which I will pull it up for you guys right now, that's like pretty much the last place where I want them to put it. But we know they're not going to put it in a nice place. We know that they're going to put it somewhere where it's going to just be so unfortunate. And so let me just share my screen with you guys. Share my screen with you guys. Okay. See if you guys can see. Yep. Let me just remove this for a sec. So just looking at the general schedule here is that the game was in this section here, a little bit higher. Yeah, the Manchester City game was here. Now is here, and now it's going to be postponed to a later date. And then once you get past the World Cup and we get into like February, this is not too bad. Everton, Brentford, Villa, Leicester, Bournemouth, Fulham, Palace, Leeds. Ideally, we want that game to be somewhere between February and March. Because, you know, I don't think you want to have to play Manchester City twice really close together. I just don't think you do. And we tend to not go into the ascendancy. Like at the end of seasons, we kind of start low, hit our peak January, February, go down towards the end and lose everything and then win a couple of games at the end. That's kind of how we do. Around April, May, schedule tends to get a little bit more difficult. We tend to have more injuries. We tend to have more competitions, and we seem to fall apart. So for me, I'd prefer to see this game rescheduled between February and March. Now, let me show you April. Let me show you April, because April is not a nice girl, let me tell you. We have Leeds, which is not bad, Liverpool, West Ham, Southampton, Man City, Chelsea, and Newcastle. This is where our season is going to be won and lost. This is where our season is going to be either a success or a failure, because we have so many difficult games. And if we get to the latter stages of the Europa League, if we're in the latter stages of any cup, they're going to be all intertwined within some really difficult fixtures. And Chelsea are going to be fighting for top four. Newcastle are going to be fighting for Europe. West Ham is going to be fighting for Europe. Liverpool are also going to be fighting for something. So we do not want this game rescheduled in April. And I really hope they don't put it there. February, March, fine. Anything beyond then is a travesty. And so I look at it and I think, oh, would it have been better to just play it, you know, earlier or not? But we don't really have we don't have a choice, obviously, because the PSV game has to be rescheduled. But now it's just about where they're going to place this game. And can we make sure that we are ascending towards the end of the season and not tapering off and plummeting? I think that's what really worries me about Arsenal, is that we never tend to be really strong at the end. And I think that's where January makes a big difference. So, yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. But game has been rescheduled to October 20th. I did see that a lot of Arsenal fans were frustrated about the time because it's at 6 p.m., which is a strange time because if you want to get off work and go to the game, it's virtually impossible to get there on time. And so that kind of sucks, but now we just have to wait and see where Manchester City is placed. And yeah, yeah. I'm just looking at it like, okay, it is what it is, right? True says free. Thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate it. Diallo says, remember, Spurs away to City is also postponed, and so is Chelsea versus Liverpool. It's not the worst thing in the world to play City at home later in the season. Fair enough. Sheikh says, they're going to delay the rearrangement for a pivotal top four match or pivotal title match for City, which might be bad for us. I see it in April. Nith says, we are actually a joke. For F's sake, I am not going to lie. Would not even be surprised if we lose to Brentford and then beat Spurs right after. We are finishing fifth at best. Fair enough. Let's see. Here's something from Ram Kumar says, any fixture schedule is bad with Xhaka and El Neni in midfield. We lost 3 on the bounce last year, Palace, Brighton, and Southampton, which cost us the league. Yeah, no, it cost us Champions League. And it's just about, we have to make sure that the squad is big enough and that we're moving into, we don't want to peak in January and February and be basically scraping in April. That's going to be a really pivotal month. I'm looking at it and I'm like, we have to be so strong there. And other teams are going to be playing in competitions. They're going to have to prioritize. And I want to make sure that we're ready this time. We should not be going away to Newcastle and getting blown away. It can't happen again. Let's see. Stephen Jones says, a bit more confident with the teams we're playing in May. I think we're going to go to the wire for top 4. Well, that's my point, Stephen Jones, is that I don't think, I don't look at those last couple of games. Like, we always have those. The end is always like a little bit easier. Like, I don't consider Brighton like a super easy game, but you know what I mean. Brighton at home, Nottingham Forest away, Wolves away, or at home. But we don't want it to be over by then. We had Everton at the end of last season. I remember the season prior, we won 5 games in a row, but it didn't freaking matter because we sucked here in March, April, we sucked, and if we're in the latter stages of the Europa League, which we should, and we're still fighting for top 4, which we should be, by this time, this is going to be so important. So I'm really interested to see where they're going to fit those next, that Manchester City game. Now, with the 217 of you guys that are in here, I want us to kind of predict how many points we're going to get from the next 5 Premier League fixtures. We have Tottenham at home. Let me go up. Why am I struggling here? Right here. Right there. We have Tottenham at home, Liverpool at home, Leeds away, Southampton away, and Nottingham Forest at home. What do you guys think? How many points are we going to get from those games? Here are my thoughts. Tottenham at home and Liverpool at home. We need 4 points from those games. Liverpool home and away and City home and away are 4 fixtures that I'm looking at that have been certain 12-point drop for seasons now. Just certain. Like, you could mark it ahead of time because we just don't do well against those teams home or away. And so Tottenham and Man United are usually a split. We lose to them away, we beat them at home, whatever. Liverpool at home, even though I do think they're going to be better than what they have been over the last couple of weeks, we can't just be giving those points away. We can't play a good half and say how good our pretty patterns were and not get something out of that game. Am I saying that we have to win? No, I'm saying we have to get something. We need to leave here with something. And so for me, Liverpool and City, home and away, we need to get something from those games. It's unacceptable. I mean, of course, we won't always get it, but it's unacceptable for us to go away with 0 from all 4 of those matches. And so Tottenham at home, we should beat them. It will be a tough game, but in our house, in our backyard, we should be able to beat them at home. Liverpool, we should get at least a point. None of this nonsense about playing well, and then when they started to turn the screw, then we give up 2 goals at our near post, BS, but we were the better team, blah, blah, blah. None of that. We need to get something from those games no matter what. Leeds away, I expect to win. Southampton away, expect to win. Nottingham Forest, expect to win. So I'm going to say, um, mm, at the very least, we should be getting 11 points out of those group of games. 11. We need to be pushing, for real this time around. And so, yeah, we're kind of done. We're beyond that point where it's just okay for us to play good football. Like, we need to be getting points from these games. And so, yeah, I expect at least 11 points from those 5 matches. What are you guys saying? Bro Pro says 11 seems fair. Keenan says 11 points would be solid. Yeah, I just feel like Arsenal need to hold ourselves accountable a little bit more. I understand how top 4 works. Generally, you just need to beat the teams outside of the top 6 and you can make top 4. But as a club, I think we need to that those points against the top 6, we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard and expect to get something from it. Last season, I watched Brentford get points at Liverpool, and I know that when we tend to play Liverpool, they tend to be as strong as possible, but our strongest 11 versus their strongest 11 it needs to be closer. And I just feel like over the years, we've been okay with not getting the points from those teams. And I think we need to turn that page this season. Doesn't mean that we need to beat them every single time. I don't expect us to go away from home at Anfield and get the 3 points, but we need to leave with something. I don't think it's such a difficult fixture where it's a certain loss. I don't think going away from home to the Etihad should be a certain loss, not for a team that thinks that they're going to be in the top 4, not for a team that feels like they're right up there with everybody else. And so, would Chelsea expect certain loss? Absolutely not. Spurs, would they expect it to be a certain loss? No. We need to hold ourselves to a higher standard. We need to get something from them games. Ram Kumar says, we have not beaten top 4 clubs in the last 15 years, maybe a couple here and there. Exactly. It's a couple here and there. It's usually, especially away from home at the Etihad and Liverpool over the last couple of years has been just a complete, just annihilation, just very embarrassing 5-0s, 4-0s, things like that. And we should close the gap to the point where we should be able to get a point. And I think that's where game management and Arteta being smarter and things like that need to come in. I think we need to not be above. I get against, Spurs and Manchester United, you feel like you can go toe to toe with your style of play and get something. But against the better teams away from home, Liverpool and Man City, we need to be, I think, a little bit more, not pragmatic per se, but just instead of playing Sambi, play Zinchenko in midfield and play Tierney at left back. We can still play our way, but we mitigate the Sambi mistakes, and the Sambi mistakes come a lot, in big games, away from home especially. So that's what I'm saying. I expect us to be smarter, not necessarily not play our game and bunker down or anything like that, but just make economical changes to ensure that we get at least a point away from home. Stephen Jones says, still not confident against the top 6. Arsenal have to win these games to be successful. Also, managing games need to improve. Last season, Arsenal either won or lost games, no ties. I agree with that. And the ties come from, I think, the mentality. If you can't win, don't lose. And we tend to fall apart and make the game untenable at certain points because we lose a game in an instant. We lose a game in like a 5 to 10 minute period. Like when we played Manchester City at home, the game was over in a very quick moment. Like they got the penalty and then we got the red card very shortly after in the game. Done. Liverpool at home, the goals came in like a 5-minute period. And so just because you get scored on, like the team scores on you doesn't mean scores a goal against you doesn't mean that you need to give up another goal like that. Even against Manchester United, we saw it again. We saw shades of it. We gave away the second goal. That didn't mean that we needed to get 0 points from it. It didn't mean that we needed to give up another one within the next 2, 3 minutes. And that's where Arsenal really need to mature. We need to have some pragmatism in our game where when we get scored against that, we slow the game down. And instead of trying to go for the goal right away, just sit and try to maintain for a little bit, and that's where the maturity needs to come in. And so it's not going to be acceptable anymore to just be going to these teams and just letting them whack us up. Godwin says, I'm going for 13 points. This season may just end differently due to the World Cup. Plus, we started well, and a lot of these bigger teams have more players getting called up. Fair enough. Amira says 13 minimum, draw to Liverpool at home, fine. But if you want to be top four or better, you have to beat the lower table teams home and away, be clinical, and we can get 15 points. We create more than enough chances to win. It's about the maturity. Jamil says, why do we even think of selling Smith Rowe? That guy is hell of a talent and intelligent, very unique in his style of play. We have to be patient with him with his injury. The reason why people are thinking about it is because he has not been able to maintain his fitness. And I think there is an anxiety around keeping players too long. So I think I think it's valid, to be honest, to just at least open the dialogue without it being like, I hate ESR. The truth sets free. Thank you so much for your super chat. Says, glad you're back. Crazy summer, great distraction to chill here. Our godson, like a little brother to me, passed in a plane crash all over the news in Santa Monica, California, September 8th. Count your blessings. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. My thoughts and prayers are with you and your family. Like, that's so sad. Like, and I'm glad that at least this give you a distraction, but I hope that, you're doing okay and your family's doing okay, because that is so sad. I'm so sorry you're going through that. I really am. Wow. Okay. Clucking Bell says, for F's sake, talking about top four in September. This is diluted. This is more diluted than Tom Catton and Harry Symeou combined. Then why are you here? Why are you here? Jack Bomber says 15, and I'm not joking. We have more points than anyone at this moment, so why not push for the league? Well, I think we should always reach higher, not make our target top four, but reach higher, and then hopefully you land within whatever benchmark you had set at the beginning of the season. So I think we're more than capable of being in, the top four, top three, like right in there. I don't know if a title challenge is really on, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. I definitely hear what you're saying. Surreal says, thoughts on the Premier League All-Star Game proposal by Todd Bowley. So I'm actually making some content around that today. That'll come out on my Instagram a little bit later. I'm all for it. I think people are so like there's such stick in the muds, and they need to just relax. An All-Star Game is not going to kill the game. It's just a silly, lighthearted, kind of soccer aid type of situation where you just bring the best teams from two different areas and let them play against each other, and it's just not a big deal. I think more people would be honest about being open to it if it wasn't an American thinking about it. People don't want to Americanize their game. I totally understand it, but it's not the Super League. It's a one-off game where you get to see, for once, I mean, we never get to see it, but would it be that bad to see Holland and or KDB? I don't want to give away like my everything that I did, but see a midfield of KDB, Madison, and let's say Bruno Guimaraes together, Holland and Gordon, and I don't know, somebody else, I don't know, random players that you've never seen play together, play with each other for like one game. Like, come on, like, let's not act like it's that big of a deal. Like, I get that he's super American and like it's one side, like, okay, well, that sounds okay, but like he also went into Tuchel's office talking about 4-4-3. I get that he's so American, it's ridiculous, but it's not that. I don't think it's that bad of an idea. Anthony says it sounds dreadful. Well, what sounds dreadful about it? I guess beyond just saying like, okay, it sounds dreadful, like why? Because you don't want to see players that we never get to see play together for like a one-off game. Um, why does it sound dreadful? I guess that's what I want to get to the crux of it, because saying that it sounds dreadful without anything behind it just seems like you're just saying whatever. Hussein says, as a British person, keep all this all-star talk away from football in the UK. Don't be surprised if it happens in the future. Don't be surprised, because you know why? Things like that make money. And American sports is all about making cash. And so I get why some people are like so against it, but like it wouldn't kill you. Jack Bomber says the NBA All-Star games are always jokes and I always look forward to them. Why not take it to the Premier League? It's just fun. A says, why give him the number 10 new contract, top goal scorer, then sell him? It's madness. All players get injured at some point. Talking about Emil Smith Rowe, he's not getting injured every once in a while, like it's kind of all the time, and I think that's why people are talking about it. Blaze says, Jess, I think people don't want to make the Premier League another NBA. Well, it won't ever be an NBA because there's no relegation, promotion, there's nothing like that. It would still be the same. It's completely separate from what you would see on a day-to-day basis in the Premier League. An all-star game would not be in place of what you guys know and love to be the Premier League. It would be a one-off game on the off season, potentially, maybe mid-season. That means absolutely nothing. It wouldn't be any worse than watching Manchester City and Barcelona play against each other in a charity match for absolutely nothing at the beginning of this season. It would not hurt. It would not hurt. It would just be fun. Like it really, you know what I mean? But that's my thoughts, because it would not change the Premier League, because it would be a completely separate game. And what you would be seeing on a day-to-day basis, you wouldn't even have to really watch it if you don't want to, because you wouldn't be forced to, because it wouldn't be in place of anything that you guys know and love. Bro Pro says, I like the idea of all-stars. Imagine Elise, Zaha, and Saka in a team. So I'm not going to spoil it because I am making content around it later. And so, I will have my North and South lineups and all that kind of stuff. But it may happen at some point. It won't happen in any time in the near future. And if it does happen at some point, guess what? You don't have to watch it, because you don't have to, because nobody's forcing you in front of the TV to watch it, guys. But yeah, so that's all with that. But I had a fun time with you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. We just kind of talked about whatever, because I wish we could be talking about a game right now, but obviously that's not possible because we're not playing our game tomorrow. And so we'll be looking forward to the Champions League matches tonight. And then there will be some Europa League games on tomorrow, but I probably won't watch them because they're not us. And then we play on Sunday against Brentford, but you will have a show on Friday to kind of talk about all of that. So I really enjoyed talking to you guys today. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, get in the comments afterwards, and let me know what you guys thought about this show. Even you, Clucking Bell, so excited that you're here. Glad you like it. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, y'all.